So, up until now, we've talked about how France in the 18th century was basically a giant pressure cooker. You had the monarchy's crazy spending and a financial crisis that was squeezing everyone. The whole system was strained, totally unequal, and just about ready to blow. But the final explosion, well, it wasn't just going to come from those old problems. It would be lit by a brand new force. See, something new was stirring in the shadows. This wasn't just about being hungry or overtaxed anymore. This was about new ideas, new ambitions, all driven by a group of people who were about to flip the entire world upside down. You know, for centuries, peasants had rebelled. They'd rise up against crazy taxes or starvation, but those revolts, they were almost always crushed. They just didn't have the money, the organization, or the big ideas to make real change. But this time was different. The real engine of this revolution came from a new group inside what was called the Third Estate, which was pretty much everybody in France who wasn't a noble or a priest. And this new group, they had ambition. So who were these people exactly? They weren't born with fancy titles. No, these were merchants making a fortune from trade routes, manufacturers creating beautiful silks and wool, and professionals like lawyers and government officials. The big difference here, they were educated, they were well off, and most importantly, they had earned their spot through their own skills and hard work, not because of their last name. And that brings us to their number one belief, an idea that was absolutely radical at the time. They believed that your place in the world shouldn't depend on who your father was. It should depend on your talent, your skill, your hard work, your merit. I mean, that one simple idea was a direct challenge to the entire foundation of French society. Okay, so you've got this rising, ambitious class of people who are fed up. But where did they get these big society-changing ideas? Well, they got them from the great thinkers of the day. You can think of them as the 18th century's biggest influencers. These guys provided the intellectual ammunition for the revolution. First up, you've got John Locke. For what felt like forever, kings ruled with something called divine right. The basic idea was, God picked me to be king, so my power is absolute. End of story. But Locke, in his famous book, just completely took that idea apart, piece by piece. He argued that no ruler's power should be absolute. Building on that, Jean-Jacques Rousseau came along and proposed the social contract. He said, hey, government isn't some command from God, it's a deal. It's an agreement between the people and the people they choose to represent them. The government's whole job is to protect our rights, and its power comes from us, the people. And then, to top it all off, we get Montesquieu. He gave them the actual playbook. He asked, how do you stop a government from getting too powerful and turning into a tyranny? His answer was brilliant. You split its power into 3 separate branches. You have the legislative to make laws, the executive to carry them out, and the judiciary to interpret them. This creates a system of checks and balances so no one part gets too much control. And listen up, because here is a massive tip for your exams. This wasn't just some theory in a book. This exact model for government was actually being put into practice right then across the Atlantic Ocean. The brand new United States of America used it as the foundation for their constitution. For people in France, this was a real-world working example of these ideas in action. Now, these were some seriously powerful ideas, right? But ideas are only powerful if people actually hear them. And in 18th century France, they didn't just stay in dusty old libraries. Oh no, they spread like wildfire. These ideas totally went viral. People were debating them like crazy in the coffee houses and salons all over Paris. Books and newspapers spread the word across the whole country. And here's the really important part. For the huge number of people who couldn't read, others would read these texts aloud in public squares. So when the news got out that King Louis XVI was planning to raise taxes yet again, this new way of thinking turned that old frustration into pure, focused fury. To really get a feel for the mood, there's nothing better than hearing from the people who are actually living through it. So let's check out 2 really different accounts that show just how incredibly tense things had gotten. This first one is from Georges Danton, a guy who would later become a huge leader in the revolution. He's talking about his youth here. He's smart, he's got an education, but he keeps hitting a brick wall. He couldn't get a good job in the courts, couldn't join the army, couldn't even find a place in the church. And why? Simple. He wasn't born a noble. His talent meant absolutely nothing in a system that only cared about your family name. You can just feel the bitterness dripping from those words. All right, now for a totally different view. This comes from an English traveler, Arthur Young, writing just 2 years before everything exploded. And wow, is it a chilling warning. He saw firsthand how the nobles were treating the peasants like abused slaves. And he basically predicts what's going to happen. He's saying, if you're going to live in luxury while everyone around you is suffering, you better not be surprised when they finally snap and turn on you, violently. So let's really dig into this for a second. What's Arthur Young actually saying? Who's he pointing the finger at? And what specific dangers is he seeing on the horizon? Okay, here's the breakdown. He is 100% criticizing the French nobility. He's calling them out for their cruelty and for being completely blind to the suffering they're causing. And the danger he senses, it's not just a protest or a little riot. He's predicting a violent, bloody, and personal revenge. He foresees a revolt where the oppressed won't just burn down a building, they'll go after the families of their masters. He could feel that deep, simmering hatred just waiting to boil over. So let's put all the pieces together. You have this smart, ambitious, educated middle class that's been completely shut out of the system. You have these radical new ideas spreading everywhere, ideas about freedom, rights, and a government that answers to the people. And you have this old, rigid, unfair system of privilege that just keeps pushing and pushing. All of these ingredients were now swirling together in that pressure cooker, and the heat was being cranked all the way up. The stage is officially set. All the pieces are in place for an explosion that is going to change not just France, but the entire world, forever. In our next explainer, we are going to see the exact moment that spark finally hits the powder keg, and the revolution truly begins. Trust me, you are not going to want to miss it.